Hello, this is Daryl here, sending love as always. Thank you for tuning in. I just want to say if you like this interview, you can check our website for companion workbooks, action guides, tools, checklists, templates, and show notes with links for everything mentioned on the call. Just visit bestbusinesscoach.ca. That's best, B-E-S-T, businesscoach.ca. Enjoy. Hi, I'm Daryl Urbanski, and welcome to the Best Business Podcast. My mission is to help create 200 new multimillionaire business owners. How? You'll do better when you know better. In my interviews, you'll hear from self-made millionaires, seven-figure business owners, authors, and world-class experts sharing how they did it so you can too, without experiencing the same obstacles they did. Now, if you like this interview, please share it with a friend you think will benefit. They'll appreciate it, and I will as well. You can also connect with me on social media. Look for Daryl Urbanski, D-A-R-Y-L, Urban Ski, U-R-B-A-N-S-K-I, and add me so we can be friends. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy what I've prepared for you right here, right now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always, and today we are joined by my friend and CEO founder at Tech Emergence, and now repeat guest on our show, Dan Fagella. Tech Emergence is the only market research and company discovery platform focused exclusively on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Dan sold his first business, which he was building when him and I first met, for 6 figures. After building his second business from $0 to $75,000 a month, we did an interview here on this show. You may want to go back and listen to that one after hearing this, and ultimately, he was doing over $175,000 a month and sold it for a 7-figure exit. Both businesses served as economic fuel for Tech Emergence, his true passion. Dan believes the most important ethical considerations of the coming 30 years will be on the creation or expansion of sentience and intelligence in technology. Tech Emergence is intended first as a vehicle to proliferate an open-minded conversation about the implications and applications of AI, simply because Dan feels it's so important. So I've asked Dan to join us here today so we could all discover what's coming in the near future and how we can align our businesses to make the most of it. So Dan, thank you for joining us, my friend. I always love our conversations. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great, Daryl. I'm excited to be here. And just to calm everybody down, too, I think it's important to note most of our chat here today will be about growing and selling a multi-million-dollar e-commerce business. AI is certainly where I am now, but we'll be hopping into your normal rigmarole right here, my good man.
Now, I kind of showed them a little bit about your background,
Yeah.
But not a lot of people know, like, where you're from or kind of family you have. Like, do you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Is this, like, are you getting grandparent, like, how to be successful with this juice, like the secrets of time or what?
Yeah, not a ton probably. So I think my dad's dad had a laundry truck. I mean, it wasn't the kind of business you could ever, sell.
Right.
And I think back in 1930 something, probably like more people were, or there were a lot of sort of entrepreneurs of that kind of regular fashion. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how he paid the bills. They were definitely not even quite middle class per se. And then my dad had a carpet store, so he sold kind of carpets and tile. We're in a really small town in Rhode Island.
Which is a really small state.
Rhode Island is the smallest state in the U.S., and Wakefield is an extremely small town. By itself, Wakefield's probably only 4,000 or 5,000 people. Surrounding towns, we get a little bit more, but it's definitely, unless it's the summertime, there's no reason to go down there. So, yeah, no major business wisdom in youth, but fortunately an emphasis on if you fail, really there's nobody else to blame. And so at least that kind of old school, immigrant, just hustle you schmuck, at least that kind of kicked in. But certainly no built-in insight, that's safe to say.
Got it.
No advice from youth about accounting and marketing and things of this nature.
So then how did you even get started as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I was teaching at a jiu-jitsu academy when I was an undergrad in college, and they went out of business because that's what martial arts academies do. And so I had nowhere to train, and I didn't want to have to drive an hour to train. So I figured, in a completely not long-term thinking way, I thought, man, I should just find a way to have a gym, and then I don't have to drive very far to train a lot and compete. So I rolled out some old wrestling mats in the back of my dad's carpet store. I traded him by paying for the electric and the heating when we were using that space, and we were using this big warehouse when the carpet store was closed down. It's like 6 o'clock at night, and just started teaching there. And then that business actually ended up turning into like a 4,000 square foot formal martial arts gym in 2 or 3 years. I sold that thing to kind of start the e-commerce game. So
Right.
started off very, very haphazard, Daryl, very much like, man, I just don't want to get a job, and I think martial arts is more fun than delivering pizza.
Right.
So that's
Right.
that's kind of how I got off the ground.
Right, and that's where we met, in the building of our martial arts schools,
Yep.
which was awesome. So that's and that's also even honestly in a short time period. Like this isn't. I don't even think we're at 10. It's not been 10 years.
No, not even close. I think when you and I met, I was 23. I'm now 29.
Yeah. Okay.
So this was actually not horrendously long ago. Yeah.
Right. So for people listening, when they're trying to think like, oh, they say it takes 10 years to be successful and stuff. I mean, you can have a 7-figure exit in less than 10 years, in less than 6 years, because Dan's already had it. If you're focused and and on it, and if maybe you don't want to exit, but you can still build a substantial business in a short period of time.
It's true.
I think a lot of people underestimate or overestimate what they can get done in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, but they underestimate what they can do in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So
I think that's safe to say, and that's commonly stated in other domains like the future of technology and whatnot. We think there'll be some huge changes in the next year, but then we imagine 20 years from now it'll kind of be the same with some slight differences. So yeah, this is, I think, sort of how the human mind works. We weren't built for this originally, Daryl. We've just got to cope.
So what were some of the biggest challenges for you in going through that, and from just having like a rec club to a professional business to exiting it to building a new business from scratch online this time? Like what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think, for the sake of the audience that's tuned in and sort of what might be useful, I think, the transition from a physical martial arts facility basically just to fill the pressing need of having to pay for Ivy League graduate school and not having any other ways, to going into an e-commerce business whose goal, Daryl, from the get-go, the goal of Science of Skill, the company that I sold to fund what I'm doing now in the Valley here, from the get-go, the whole point was to build something saleable so that I could, move to the old San Francisco area without having to give away any equity in my company off the bat, at least not right off the bat. So that was the whole point. That's a big transition, to go from a very provincial 4,000 person town teaching people how to punch and kick and choke one another to an online business with recurring revenue that has processes in place that make it worth 90% cash down for a little over $1 million. It's definitely a different ballgame. So the biggest hurdles were probably off the bat learning kind of the requisite required skills. So man, how do you like build a website? How do you what do you do with email? What do you use to process payments on the internet? All of these things were completely brand new. So the bumbling through the tools and the bumbling through how to use the tools was, I'd say, certainly a challenge in getting started building an e-commerce business that I knew had to be multiple millions in top line.
So, and that's I think you're probably striking a chord with a lot of people either that have already gone through that in whatever capacity for their business or are experiencing that right now. And how did you overcome those then? Yeah,
two primary ways. One was just a lot of Googling really late at night and less sleep than I would have preferred, maybe. That's sort of one way. The other way is I've always, and I don't necessarily advise it, but I do always spend a relatively exorbitant amount on kind of consultative stuff and learning from people who've already done what I want to do. So in the martial arts world, I didn't, get my black belt under the guy down the street who taught martial arts. I drove, 4 hours to find the lightweight no-gi world champion because I also wanted to win national championships in no-gi jiu-jitsu. So kind of, do you want to learn, like there's nobody in Wakefield, Rhode Island who runs, big old e-commerce company. So for me, it was kind of finding a lot of folks. I mean, some of these people, Daryl, the people at 6th Division out of Infusionsoft, other folks in kind of the membership site space and kind of subscription revenue space. I just tried to get into as much kind of coaching as I could. So instead of having a slightly nicer apartment or, eating something other than, white bread and frozen spinach or something, I just spent all that on frantically learning from people who had gotten to whatever the next step was and just feverishly trying to implement as fast as possible.
I remember we used to have our saying, roof and ramen.
Yeah, just give me roof and ramen and I'll blow the rest on making sure that, I can escape my provinciality. So that was that was the objective, yes. Really, really focusing on basically the mental exercise, Daryl, was number one. I mean, again, a lot of late night Googling and figuring it out because I couldn't pay for that much consulting in these early days in my earlier 20s. But, learning from whoever I could and Googling a bunch, but basically figuring out, if I were to guess what the next phase is, let's say the next phase, if I'm starting from zero in e-commerce, selling information products and training, the next phase maybe is 1 or 200,000. Who's kind of gotten there? I bet you they don't charge $1,000 an hour. I bet you I can kind of learn a little something from them. Let's go find those people. So determining what the next phase is in a like or analogous kind of success, that became sort of my mental exercise for who I want to learn from.
I love that. So you weren't trying to network with billionaires yet. You were like, let me find someone that's, doing six figures. Let me find someone that's doing $500,000.
Totally.
Let me find someone that's doing $1 million. Let me find someone that's doing, I got it.
Big time. Yeah. And I think, look, I mean, to be honest, I can at least speak for myself. Look at talking to, Buffett about selling, subscription information products on the internet. I mean, to be honest, I'm sure I would have garnered some high level insights that I'd be grateful for. But number one, I couldn't afford an hour of Buffett's time. Number two, this is a kind of specialized thing. Like, we're talking about setting up landing pages here. I just don't think that's Buffett's ball game. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Right.
It was specific, specialized experience and kind of the next phase up. This was sort of the mode of finding the mentor.
Now, I have a question because your company was the Science of Skill. For anyone who heard that, can you give them a breakdown? Like, what is the Science of Skill?
Yeah, sure. So Science of Skill was essentially, and still is, I don't run the business, but we had a buyer group from Ohio, of all places in the world, who was running some software as a service businesses, selling to governments, and wanted to get into recurring revenue in a consumer space that had a faster buying cycle than governments. So they now own it. But it does the same thing. Basically, Science of Skill sells physical gear and instructional programs for self-defense and self-protection. So some of this is hand-to-hand self-defense skills, learning from kickboxing experts or grappling experts. Some of this is bladed weapon defense, so learning from people who train police officers on avoiding getting stabbed or cut or
I mean the science of learning a skill and developing a skill.
Yeah. Wait, what do you get?
But not the company. What's the science of learning a skill?
Oh, you want me to go into the actual science?
Yeah.
Sure. So, that was the business. But, well, interestingly enough, Daryl, there's, of course, a pretty strong crossover. So all my graduate degree stuff at UPenn was focused on kind of the cognitive science and like psychology and neuroscience of skill development. So what does it look like to get good at something? And Science of Skill was built and predicated on that. So there's a lot of interesting models and I very much don't want to bore people. Super duper don't want to do that. Anders Ericsson, founders of goal setting theory. There's a bunch of cool people to read in this regard. But there's essentially some fundamentals around what it takes to build skills. What kind of repetition is required? What kind of feedback from what kind of experts is required? How to model and simulate environments like those that you're going to be in when you need to perform otherwise. A lot of kind of tenets and principles around building skill. And a lot of this has been studied really, really, really far in depth and in kind of very basic abilities or things that are reasonably easy to study, such as playing the violin, performing in sport, memorizing numbers. These kind of tasks have had some pretty robust academic work behind them. And so there's some strong sort of theory and practice around what it takes to get good at something. And so the business Science of Skill was built on basically creating educational programs in line with a lot of those principles, in line with those same tenets.
So when you say specific type of repetition, what type? Like, how do I get good at something, Dan? I got to set some goals. I got to get regular feedback at regular intervals from experts. I got to get what do you mean specific types of repetition?
Yeah, so a really kind of important thing in this regard would be when you said you got to set some goals, that's often kind of the easiest place to go wrong first. The best place or the best way to set goals, the same person you want to learn a particular wonderful skill from, whether you want to win a martial arts tournaments or you'd like to grow a business, you could arbitrarily set goals just while you're dreaming in your bedroom. But a better bet would be to find the same people who've accomplished those objectives or help train other people to accomplish those objectives and consult them even in the goal setting process. So anchoring your aims to what you arbitrarily consider to be a right and requisite next step is sort of drastically improper. So if you want to be a martial arts champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you might might determine all kinds of wacky, wild things that you think, okay, well, these are my goals. I'm going to train takedowns 60% of my time. I'm going to watch competition videos 20% of my time. I'm going to make sure I'm training at least this many times a week. Kind of who are you to do that? So skill development off the bat involves the structure of training, the structure of how these skills are worked about being developed, being informed by someone who knows their stuff. So if you want to grow a pizza chain that has 12 or more locations, you could arbitrarily determine what your first steps, next steps, and further steps are there, but it would probably be better advised to find someone who's done it. So goal setting off the cuff should be something that's referenced by experts, not just your training sessions.
Got it. Okay. So I love that. So obviously knowing the way is huge in this, as opposed to trying to sit in a garage and figure out how to defend yourself with somebody who knows nothing. Better to talk to an expert.
Definitely. The Bonaparte quote here is read over and over again the campaigns of Hannibal and Caesar and Frederick the Great, and you'll become a great general. Of course, at some point Bonaparte had cannons, right? Caesar didn't have cannons. You got to start thinking a little bit outside of the box. But generally, for step one, there's sort of been a guy who's done it. And in terms of how those requisite skills are cultivated, what kind of training and learning is required, it's generally very well advised to consult those persons who have evidence of those results you're looking for, rather than going to them with your own preconceived goals first. I say go to them to get your goals in the damn first place. This is sort of skill development 101.
Got it. And then is it just the 10,000 hours? You got the expert making sure you're on a path, and then you just bang out your 10,000 hours?
That's 10,000 hours is like it's a perversion of Anders Ericsson's work. It's like a buzzword version of Anders Ericsson's work. Anybody who wants to read, Anders Ericsson is University of Florida, father of modern skill acquisition sort of science. There's a little bit more kind of robustness to that in terms of the structure of training and like how feedback feeds in and things along those lines. But yeah, certainly it's time. It's regularity of training. It's consistent feedback during that training. And as mentioned before, Daryl, the regimen and structure of the training and what the training is focused on should be very much informed by folks who sort of know their stuff. So if you imagine two situations, one of which is you want to become an opera singer and you live on a farm in Wisconsin and you want to stay on that farm in Wisconsin and communicate with no one, and you just have records to listen to, it is possible and conceivable, and I'm sure it has been done, that you could become an opera singer through that method. It would be better advised to determine your voice exercises, determine how much is too much training, how much is too little training from persons who are exceedingly experienced in that domain. And then to garner their feedback consistently as you're practicing your, I don't know any opera terminology, but whatever it is that those people do. So I literally I don't know the words.
Yeah,
like your Barrettos and your some random Italian word for singing on a stage. Clearly not my life choice, but if that were your life choice, it'd be better advised to kind of riff off the bat with someone who knew their stuff.
Sure. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate you indulging my because I think that's important, because we talked about where you came from, talked about like your development along this path, and I think that will be really helpful for a lot of people, because a lot of people have no idea. Remember when we talked about like black belt eyes, forgetting what it's like to be a new person at the gym?
Yeah.
A lot of people have no idea what it's like to develop a skill or the business. And so I think what we just honestly gave, and people hopefully were writing down, if not, they may want to re-listen and write it down. Might want to listen to this interview a couple of times, but you literally just gave them a formula there for how to accomplish anything, any skill that they want, really, just have some time, have regularity of training, have focus in your training. On what? Well, this, have input from experts, top of the field experts from the get-go, from the beginning, like you said, in the planning stage, to set your expectations realistically.
Yep.
To tell you, make sure that you're not overdeveloping in any one area too much over another. I think that's fantastic. So, and then the regular feedback from experts as you progress. And is it multiple experts are ideal, or is it better to have one person you sync in on?
I guess there's sort of debate on this in some regard. I think the hungriest people and the farthest reaching people in any given domain generally will be eager for multiple perspectives.
Right.
Again, the Bonaparte quote lists 4 or 5 generals, and I think for good reason. if you're going to overwhelm yourself and learn from 50 people, you're probably blowing it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can garner from different people with different perspectives, I think that this is reasonably advisable. But if it becomes so distractive that you feel like you're being torn, you're probably crossing the edge. But I mean, in the martial arts world, Daryl, which you would understand, if you get some other world champion who's 2 towns over teaching a seminar, I mean, you're just going to go to the goddamn seminar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just going to freaking go. Like, oh, who cares? He's won a couple world titles. Like,
yeah, I love my coach. I love my.
Yeah. God bless my coach, right? But whatever, it is what it is. It's $50. I'm going to go learn, the way that this guy does his takedowns. I'm going to learn the way that he does his drilling. Yep. So I think that this is advisable in business as well. But yeah, the really important point, I think, which I know I've kind of flubbed in earlier ventures, is not consulting folks in the middle of the path, but consulting folks on sort of what path to walk down, what expectations to set, what your initial goal should be off the cuff. Right now for Tech Emergence, for example, Daryl, I'm building a different kind of business than the first 2 companies that I've grown and sold. And I'm having to learn systems and processes around organic traffic, systems and processes around editorial and content creation. And instead of sort of saying, well, I guess this is what it looks like to scale this process, I'm paying money to talk to people who've worked at Bloomberg and Vox and New York Times, etc. Mm-hmm. And just saying, hey, man, here's how our spreadsheets are set up to do such and such. Let me know what you would change. Let me know how you did it. Let me know what you would do in my shoes. And let me just anchor myself in some semblance of best practice. And I can innovate when it's time, but at least get me up to speed on what works here. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. So anchoring goals, initial processes, initial goals off of someone who at least understands the reality, I think is very much to be advised.
No, it's a fantastic point there. I mean, I always say that's one of my favorite things about books is you could spend 40, 50, 60 years figuring out something for yourself, or you could just buy the guy's book or the girl's book and sit down for a few hours or a week, or a few days and pick up where they left off. Definitely. You don't need to invest 40 years in that. Yep. Jim Rohn says that. He says you should spend your evenings reading the thoughts of like Plato and Socrates and all the great thinkers of the world. You could sit there all night and not think of that stuff on your own.
Yeah, exactly. You may never arrive at like Aristotle's exact list of virtues on your own on a couch. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Safe to say, or Pythagorean theorems. Assuming you didn't learn that kind of stuff in school. So for sure, and I think if you can't afford to go pay a bunch of consultants, and I actually couldn't, I just decided to do it instead of eat. Then books and the internet are kind of the free university of the world, or as close to free as it gets. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely, I'm definitely congenial with that. I'm guilty of purchasing more books than I can read.
Yeah, me too.
But it's out of that same eagerness.
So, well, exactly. The book you don't own, you can't read, and the book you don't read can't help you. So the first step is you got to own it, right? Which means you're going to have. It's like in muscle building. If anyone here is in fitness, if you're trying to bulk up and add weight, you're going to put on fat too. You just, so you're going to buy books and you're going to pay for stuff that you may or may not use, but it's all part of the process. Right?
Nice analogy, Daryl. I never heard that one, man. That's pretty good.
Well, it's just real. So now, what's the deal with some of the habits you had that you felt helped you accomplish and have helped you accomplish that? Because not everyone can build a successful business, and then even when they do have a successful business, not everyone can exit it and find a seller and that the whole way through. So what habits do you feel have helped you and some of the other successful people you've seen on your path?
Yeah. Now, just in terms of where you want to point the laser beam here, do you want to go into kind of like day-to-day work habit stuff? Do you want to go into more like business processes to ensure that sort of we're in place? Where do you want to knuckle down on like a personal level?
Let's do both. Let's start off on the day-to-day you and then talk about as a
business. Yeah, sure. I'd be remiss to say that I invented a lot of the habits that I sort of follow through on a regular basis. This stuff has been informed by kind of the full gambit from books like Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, which is sort of case studies on large companies, like public level companies, and sort of the processes underlying business growth to, even the David Allens of the world, Getting Things Done, which is a great book, Tony Robbins. There's all kinds of people I've learned from, but things that have stuck for me, Daryl, that I think have been helpful, and they've been helpful for me in a couple accounts, just to be clear too. So Science of Skill, again, luckily we got it past the $2 million mark in the fourth year. Should be in the Inc. 500, not the 5,000, should be in the Inc. 500, and did get an exit for that thing. Important to bear in mind that I was doing that at the same time as I was spending, another 20 to 40 hours a week on Tech Emergence. Mm-hmm. So that was a part-time venture. So Science of Skill was a part-time Inc. 500 venture. So very light on the sleep. very, very aggressive on the work, and had to figure out how to jam a bunch of stuff in. So things that were important for me and continue to be are quarterly, weekly, and daily regimens that sort of anchor on priority. Because there's 1,000 directions to go when I'm trying to, write a TED Talk and finish a piece for, Huffington Post and, hire another writer for Tech Emergence, and at the same time, finish some product launch for some new self-defense knife and, orchestrate some big email campaign in e-commerce. Like it very quickly can just become a frantic, mouth-frothing, unproductive kind of bunch of lunacy. And I've certainly been there on a few occasions, but have been fortunate enough to learn and survive. So the quarterly process for me, Daryl, and this is sort of like, there's other I could kind of distill other habit stuff, but really the rhythm is more important than oh, here's the cool, neat yoga trick I do in the morning. I don't know if I can really care. Right. For me, the rhythm and consistency element of ensuring priority focus is a big deal. And those are going to change. Your priorities are going to violently change on a semi-regular basis in business. You're going to have to be forced to calibrate to that. But so long as you're inching towards the direction that progress is, and you can ensure that you're doing that, you can kind of make it through a lot of this junk. So the way that I like to go about that, there's a great book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish that talks about these processes on a business level, but on a personal level, I kind of go through the same things. On a quarterly basis, the big game, Daryl, is really brainstorming, and this is actually something I do with the team. What are the major themes of improvement that in the next 3 months are most likely to get us to the sort of business goals that we presently have? Mm-hmm. So last year, getting multiple millions to the top line was a big deal. We definitely wanted to be more than 2 million in the top line. We had a certain amount in terms of profit margin that we wanted to get. Mm-hmm. And kind of to make it fun and kind of gun for it, we were going to try to shoot for the Inc. 500 thing. Eventually, I'm going to have to raise venture money, and it'll be better to say, in my 20s, I was in the Inc. 500 than it will be to say in my 20s, I won a national martial arts championship. VCs aren't going to really care about that. So have to have some sort of signal that I can create a return on investment. So those were some objectives. Hey, what in the next 3 months, what are going to be the major thematic focuses that are going to get us to those goals? So just examples for you, Daryl. This could be refining and improving customer service processes, getting our, and then boiling that down into tangible objectives. Okay, we're going to rewrite our templates for customer service. We're going to get our ticket time to less than 12 hours for every single ticket. We're going to, have a weekly training call for 90 minutes to go through tickets with our outsourced team to really refine and improve the more nuanced responses that have to be more dialed in than they are now. Okay, the next thing is we need to revamp, the store page, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead.
So you've got annual goals, and then you have quarterly kind of review that you do with your team, and you come up with quarterly priorities.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
3 to 5 quarterly priorities or rocks
Big
that you're
time.
going to focus all your activity on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
You're right there. Yeah, you're using the rock term, right? This is that's like Stephen Covey's word, but Vern actually references it in Scaling Up as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, exactly. 3 or 4 kind of core themes of this kind, which then get boiled down into doable tasks, right. Whether it's a numerical goal that we're going to hit and or a project that we're going to complete within that given quarter. And then we go ahead and assign all those different projects, which are high priority projects. We've taken a lot of time to think about them. In my early days, I would have rushed and just set goals arbitrarily. This is a much more robust process to really think with the team, take a half day to really boil down what the hell do we need to focus on in order to succeed here and have everybody win, and then assign people to those goals. That's one. Number 2, Daryl, is on a weekly basis to assign and sort to myself, and my team does this for themselves as well, what are going to be the core sort of doables that are going to get done in the next week. So what are the things that will be knocked dead by the time next Sunday comes to a close? And then to essentially draw those from a combination of 2 things. Number 1, 3 things. What came up as a surprise? What maybe didn't get done last week? And what are our quarterly priorities, which really is the first reference. We got to look there first. So if there's something that didn't get done last week, but kind of nobody cares, let it die. And I think if you don't have a priority reference process, it's very easy to just frantically squabble on whatever sort of is unfinished, which is, again, a mode in my earlier 20s I probably would have resorted to, especially juggling multiple LLCs. So being able to weekly reference that. And then for me personally, Daryl, I don't really force my team to do this, but for me personally, I'll pick 3 of those that are sort of the big ones. So by the time next Sunday comes to a close, like if I get hit by a bus, if everything goes wrong every single single day, and I don't get done anything else that's on this list of 7 or 8 core things I want to get done next week, here's the 3 that are just going to get done. Whether it means like I skip meals, whether it means I don't reply to any emails for 4 days, I just don't care. Here's the 3 things that are going to get done this week, because this is what moving the ball forward looks like most. So in addition to setting some tasks for the coming week based on those 3 things I talked about, really figuring out what are the big boys that absolutely have to get done in order for anybody to be able to say, we are farther along now than we were last week, to ensure that saying that would not be a lie. So determining those core 3 is a big deal. And then kind of similar process to that, Daryl, and then I'll wrap right up here, is doing something similar on a daily basis. So when I wake up on a daily basis, I still do this paper-based. I switched to computer for 6 months.
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I'm not going to play games, man. I still do a paper-based. It just is what it is. I feel like less of a person. I feel terrible about having paper-based, but yeah, I feel like I consider it borderline a moral flaw. But at some point, everything's going to be super digital and in our heads, and I'm going to have to get used to get jacked into machines and stuff like that. I should probably adopt as much on the cutting edge as I can. But in terms of focus, it sort of boils down. I'll put some tea in the morning, and I will, on the top right-hand corner of a quarter sheet of paper, jot down what are the 3 things in that day. And one of them, probably, Daryl, is one of the top 3 for the week. Yep. So, on Monday, there's going to be one of my big top 3 for the week I'm just going to want to kill by the time Monday ends. I want one of those things dead. So, what are the top 3 things even for this day? And then I'll also structure out what are all of my meetings, what do I want to get out of those meetings, what do I want to bring up in those meetings. So I'll kind of write down everything that's hard pressed already into the calendar and sort of exactly what I want to get out of all of those individual sessions, and then figure out what are the top 3 objectives for the day. And it's really an iterative process, but what it's let me do, particularly in the days of juggling multiple businesses, which I totally don't advise as a way of life, is a consistent reference to priority, not a consistent reference to what could be done next, what is left undone, but a consistent reference to priority.
Right.
In terms of habits, I couldn't tell you I have anything more important than a process of consistently referencing priority. Right. There's just sort of nothing more important than that for me personally.
So you can focus on ignore the trivial many and focus on the critical few.
Yeah, big deal, man. I mean, that's the ball game, and it's hard to determine what are the critical few, right? That takes this sort of calibrated quarterly, half-day, mega brain dump process to really distill those. But once you've distilled them, don't let go of them. When you hit the ground running with frantic effort, at least have that be pointed at the highest, wisest, most robust objectives that you have. Do that hard thinking. Put in the hard work to do that hard thinking, and then when you work, at least you have a North Star to chase down. I can't think of anything that translates across businesses sort of that's more important than that rhythm.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Honestly, again, like I said at the beginning, people here might have, will hopefully have written some of this down or typed it down or something. If not, they may want to re-listen to this interview a couple of times. So now, Dan, let me ask about the exiting.
Yeah.
How do you separate yourself from the business and exit? How do you have a sellable asset? Because I know a lot of people get stuck in things like earnouts where they have to slowly, gradually relinquish ownership.
Yeah.
And then they get paid over 10 years, and
really tough.
Right. Anytime sign of danger, the buyer gets to back out and, so.
Yep. How do you get favorable terms? So this is a great question. Everything's going to be a give and a take. So in the sale of Science of Skill, instead of trying to get somebody to pay 4.5 times profit, and then see what kind of terms they want to come up with, I decided that if I was able to get around 3 times profit, which is a little bit over $1 million at that time, and I got 90% up front, and I was really not obligated to do any additional work, that this would actually be favorable for me, because here in Silicon Valley, you don't wait 10 years to do things. So that was the way that I decided to skin the cat. So everything's a give and a take. That's one very important facet. If you want to sort of race things to the front in terms of payment, there's going to be kind of some chips to slide around the table in terms of who gets benefits on what. But another really important point, Daryl, is, and this was advice I got from a guy in the, almost 80-year-old guy in the semiconductor industry industry who I was chatting with casually about the goal of selling this company about a year before I did. And he said some advice that I very much took to heart and I think was critical to getting the business sold, which was, young man, create a list top to bottom of everything operational that you do. Everything that involves like turning gears, turning cranks to get a result out the back end. If you are meeting with someone else who is the doer, that's fine. You don't have to get rid of that necessarily. If you are advising on a weekly basis, helping the team set some goals, that's okay. You're being a director there, that's okay. But if you're doing the doing, son, then create a list and create a list of everything that is currently being done by you. Everything that can fit under operations that slides under your name. You make a list, and over the course of the next year, you put every single one of those items under somebody else. And if you want to show up to meetings, fine. You want to help set goals? Fine. Those are what directors do. That's what an owner does, but you do not want to be a worker. And this was direction that I was surprised was never put in such a simple nutshell beforehand. And I kind of eagerly took action on. So making sure that affiliate communications, sort of merchant account communications, advertising goals and budgeting processes sort of month over month, that none of these things needed to involve me going into the spreadsheets and doing work, but instead me talking to someone every Monday, let's say, and just getting an update from them. This is what an owner does. This is what a director does. So if you're doing what owners and directors do, you're basically selling kind of an object, right? You're not selling a new job that someone else has to step into. You're selling kind of this little machine filled with people and processes, and your actual crank turning is functionally nil, other than talking to the crank turners, to the people that are in the operational roles. And fortunately, I had a great team, a team who was compensated at the exit as I was, and who was just good at their respective roles. But in terms of like, if you are the actual person selling it, like if you're that guy, there's nothing wrong with doing operations if you don't have the goal of selling. But if you're going to sell, you stop doing operations, assuming you want cash up front, right? If you're okay with being there for half a decade, then by all means, make yourself as essential as possible to the business processes. But if you'd like a higher multiple, and if you'd like more of that in terms of cash, then it's very, very important to gradually step away. And what that meant for me, Daryl, was paying my team more to handle more responsibility, right? So guys, I was very upfront about it. They all knew I moved out to San Francisco. Here's kind of the direction we're going. There's some of these aspects of things that I'm doing that, Dylan, I'll be training you on, and Tim, I'll be training you on. And man, this stuff is worth cash to the damn company. So, we're going to be working on compensation to sort of work with this, but, you guys are going to be dead serious lieutenants in making this business crank. And they were, and they were paid well for it. And then, we got to the exit. So that initial process by that older gentleman who was kind enough to riff with me for 20 minutes was turned into a 12-month project to free myself up. So that's kind of the same exercise I'd advise anybody else to follow.
I think that's a fantastic exercise. So make a list of all the operational things you do, meetings you're going to, stuff you're getting built, or calls you're taking, all that sort of stuff, and make a list of that, and then get somebody else to do it. Dedicate a year to getting yourself off that list, and all those things on someone else's shoulder. Now, that's a really, like you said, it's a really simple nugget, but extremely profound. Now, I have one question. I know other people are already thinking it too. You're right. You will have to compensate your team more. How much is too much?
Yeah, I think, there's all kinds of ways to anchor this stuff. And to be honest, we weren't a large enough, a $2 million e-commerce company for me meant one full-time employee, one part-time employee, two core contractors, and some folks overseas, right? Mm-hmm. That's what $2 million meant for me. So this was not a large staff where, we got 20 people on the floor, and this is just really super duper not like that. Only one full-time employee, and again, multiple millions in the top line. So luckily there wasn't as much thinking to be done here as there would be in like a consulting business or something that's very extremely human heavy. But I think on my end, it was kind of, all right, well, what does this kind of work get compensated like elsewhere, in other businesses, in other spaces? And in my case, the marketing and sales elements, so the parts of the process that I handled that involved sales were something that I was willing to pay a percent off of in terms of what the result was for the following month on profitability. So the ability to calibrate ad spend and then correlate that directly to financial results the following month. This is taking me a lot of time personally. It's also worth an exceptional amount of money to the company, one of the most valuable processes in the company. So I decided to figure out a way to make that a commissionable simple task. So, gauging by what's similarly paid in the industry is sort of a nice way to benchmark. I can't say, I had that many people to do that with, but for me, in my case, and this will be different for everybody, in my case, marketing, sales, driving traffic, driving front-end transactions was sort of the most important process to get off my plate. And is also very much a growth and profit tied process. And for me, if I could spend 1 hour a week in a meeting instead of 6 hours a week doing the work, that was worth paying, X% of the following month's profit to the person who completely owned that process. And if they flopped, they wouldn't get paid as much. Yep. If they did great, they did basically get double what their salary was for that month.
Right.
Which is nice.
Still decent,
yeah, which is pretty nice. So Tim, who's my right-hand man, who I think you may have met at some seminar at some point.
We've met a bunch of time, had a bunch of calls.
Yeah, Tim was my main soldier. Tim was my boy. He had been there from day one. He really had the responsibility and the gusto. He had a natural inkling towards marketing. If there's anybody I'd want to give a chunk of what our profits would be, it would be Tim. He put in a lot of hours in the early days, and so I gave him probably a healthier portion of sales and marketing-driven profit than you probably would for anybody that you bring on year 5 of growing a business. But Tim was there from ground zero. So yeah, so to totally hand it off.
Yeah, there's a development there that's worth it. It's
worth
it.
Definitely. And it's like the ability for us to grow without me being able to directly tie myself to the growth is adding to the promise of the saleable asset.
Right.
In a way that more than justified commission.
Well, and even on top of that, so let's say you're making a benchmark monthly income and you bring someone like this on, your income will drop in the short term, but really, even paying them that commission, your income should still be growing.
Yeah, and not to mention if your time is growing,
right.
That's kind of nice too. Not to mention, and if you sell for a fatter multiple, that's a way to get those dollars back. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. In my case, it was just right to do it with Tim, and I super duper wanted to and make it more than fair. But it also definitely added to the saleability of the company,
which is phenomenal. So Dan, this has been amazing. This is an interview to listen to again and again for sure. You've literally walked us through the initial stages all the way through to the exit with some fantastic tips along the path. And I know that you've got a hard stop, so I want to be really respectful of your time.
Yeah.
But
I appreciate it.
I want to say before I ask anything else, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
To be frank, I think there's a lot of other nuance around kind of getting an exit. And fortunately, that stuff is easily Googleable. Like, like a bunch of my previous interviews have been on that and whatnot. It's easily findable on the internet. I think sort of in terms of broad translation across business, whether you're ready to sell or not, I think kind of the regimens of priority was probably the anchor point that was most important to kind of ultimately getting there. So yeah, I can't think of anything pressing that I would have said, man, you needed to ask this. So I think we kind of hit on the big stuff.
Yeah, Dan, that's so awesome. I know you've got 101 other priorities right now, and I appreciate you so much coming and sharing with my audience and giving some people, this is going to be a real gift. This is going to be a life-changing gift for them, the time that you spent here. If anyone wants to reach out and connect with you, there's Tech Emergence. Is that the way that they should go to techemergence.com? Is there an email or what?
Anybody can find me on, Twitter and say what's up. Probably in terms of relevance for your audience, clvboost.com stands for customer lifetime value. clvboost.com is where I still do some writing about marketing, internet marketing automation. So the sort of processes undergirding the e-commerce business that we grew and sold, that's sort of the only place where I do my journaling and meditating on that stuff. There's a white paper on that page that is essentially sort of the fundamental email processes that got us past the 7-figure mark. That's on CLV Boost. So if people are like, this is the kind of stuff I want to use for my company, clvboost.com is definitely the place to go to just check that out. You can also, find my contact stuff there as well. Yeah, Tech Emergence is cool. It's artificial intelligence. The one report that would have been fun to riff about, but it wasn't our main topic, is sort of a recent report we did on the impact of AI in marketing. Daryl, I can send you the link to reference. Sure. It's much more relevant than the homepage of Tech Emergence.
What should they Google to find it? They should Google Tech Emergence marketing?
Yeah, marketing and AI or something like that. I mean, I'll zing it along on Skype here when we hang out. But I would say in terms of relevance for business and just kind of reaching out and being in touch, CLV Boost is probably the best place to learn the business stuff. And then otherwise, just find me on Twitter, pop me a message, let me know you heard me through Daryl, and I'll be happy to hear from you. So that's about it for me, man.
That's so awesome. Dan, it is always an honor and a pleasure whenever we talk. You're one of my favorite friends, and we both started way back then.
Oh, yeah.
Chasing each other. It's just been an amazing journey, and it's such an honor and pleasure to walk that path with you and just even see you shine. And I know that the most exciting thing is we're both just getting started. Like, that's the coolest part. We have the rest of our lives ahead of us. So thank you, man. I appreciate your time today. I know you got to go, so I'll let you go, but just thank you.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate you having me on, man. I'll catch you soon.
You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give to them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast, and if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build. And I believe in you. You.